Welcome to the latest edition of Lexington Remembers. This is our special series talking with World War II veterans from Lexington as a part of the Lexington Remembers programs, which go back, I guess we've done 50 or 60 by this time. My name is Dan Fenn, and I'm delighted to have as our guest today Joe Busa, a very famous, distinguished Lexington family. I served on the Board of Selectmen with Dan for six years, a couple of terms. We had great times together. He owes me a lunch, but I never can seem to get him to pay up. Anyway, Joe, how are you related to Dan now?
First cousin. Well, yeah, he's a little distant. His brother, the four brothers were told by the grandfather who come over for a visit that if there's any sons in the family, they have to be named, the first one got to be named Joe, after the grandfather. So there was Joe on Tony's family and Dan's, and the next one, Frank, he had a son, Joe. They called him Big Joe. And I was the third Joe, and I was called Joey.
Ah, okay.
And then the fourth one was Little Joe. He was small.
I see.
But,
and where'd they come from, the family?
Well, they were born there on the farm.
Oh, I see. But wait a minute. Where did the family come from originally?
Sicily. They originally came from Sicily.
Okay. And who, big family, I could get lost pretty easily.
Oh, yes.
So who was the first?
Antonio.
Okay.
That was
And
Dan's.
Why did he come?
Well, they wanted to come to this country. They were about 16 years old when Antonio came, I think. And he ended up in Waltham, working on a dairy farm to make money to bring the other brothers over. And he did.
And this would have been about when, Joe?
Well, I was born in 23, so
Me too.
He was before that. Yeah, about 20 or so when they bought the land.
Okay.
Because I'm not too sure on when they bought it. All I know.
So Antonio came first. And
Right.
He worked in Waltham in a dairy farm, and then what happened?
He sent the money back, brought two more brothers over, Frank, the second oldest, and my father John, the third oldest. And they three of them worked together to bring over the other brother and to buy the land.
Okay.
They had a 100-acre farm.
And this is where?
In Lexington, East Lexington, down near the Arlington Reservoir.
And it's still there.
Oh, yes.
And it's still a working farm.
No, well, it is. The town of Lexington owns it.
Uh-huh.
They bought it a little over a year ago.
Okay. And one of your family still runs it, doesn't it?
No, they have no more part. Lexington runs it. And in fact, my stepdaughter is out there, a stepsister, and she's still living in one of the duplex houses.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
And
she owns it.
they bought the farm and built houses down there.
Yes,
also.
yes, they built houses and greenhouses.
So they all lived there.
Yep.
Okay. And now Dan, my colleague, lived on Farmer Road.
Yes, yes.
And that's off Lillian, which
Right.
is named after...
His grandmother.
Okay.
Yeah, her name was Lillian.
Yeah. But Dan recently moved. He moved to a development in Woburn, I think.
Oh, is that where
in
he
the
is?
last year or
Woburn?
so. Yeah.
Because I tried to find him on the phone, and I called the liquor store, and they wouldn't give it to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They wouldn't give you his phone?
No, they wouldn't even tell me. They said he's in Plymouth. So I went on information for Plymouth, and there's no Busa in Plymouth.
No, they live. He and Jody live in Woburn.
Yeah, I think
Just
they live
over
on.
the
There used to
line.
be the another greenhouse grower, Shannon Farms.
Okay. So I know that area. It's around Lowell Street.
Mm-hmm.
Where, yeah. Well, that's a great story. It's a great family story, and they all branched out and did other things.
Well, you know what we had? They were very good, the four brothers. They, as we were growing up and going into school, they pushed us for sports. They wouldn't even let us smoke.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when we come of age, you know, when everybody was
Yeah.
trying to get a cigarette. So
Yeah.
we had, and they would encourage us to go out for sports, and only in the wintertime or the fall when the farm wasn't working.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Now, there was enough Busa boys. We had our own football team. We had 2 hockey teams because we were on the reservoir,
Oh, yeah.
and 2 basketball teams, all
No
Busas.
kidding. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And you all went to the Lexington school.
Yes, I went to Lexington Grammar School, and I think it was called Monroe.
Yeah,
in East
sure.
Lexington.
My son went to Monroe,
Yeah.
too.
And then from there up to the junior high
Which
and
is
the high
now
school.
the Muzzy condominium.
Yeah,
Yeah. And where did you go? Where was the high school?
that was half high school and half junior high.
Yes, exactly. And so you graduated from there when?
1942.
All right.
I was getting ready for graduation. We were all through with the high school stuff. This is around February. And they said, well, you can get ready to go about education or whatever you want to do by March. Well, while I was there, before March come in, I got a letter from the government saying I have to go into not Washington Street, I forget where, it was in Boston, to take a physical for the Army.
So you were drafted.
I was drafted.
Yeah.
So I got in there and in 42, and I drove in, had my car parked out front because I was 18. And I tell you, we had a little trouble with one of my Uncle Guy's sons. He was a devil. And so he says, you bring your mother in, and we'll see whether you're going to be put out of school or not. So the mother come in, and she was from Belmont. She was a toughie. And the teacher was not in that day. The principal took over, Mrs. Early.
Uh-huh.
And they had a big squabble. And my aunt said, well, I win this one, and he stays. And she walked out. And what happened was the principal had the last word. She kept 4 of us back. There were 4 of us in the same class. She kept us all back 1 year.
No kidding.
Yep.
So you didn't get drafted then?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Later.
Yeah, later. See, that was about the 5th grade. Now, this is in high school.
Yeah.
See, and we were very heavy in sports.
Yeah.
And I was captain of the basketball team in 42, state champs.
Really?
And if you go down to the high school, you'll see the trophy in the
I'll
glass
bet.
case.
Isn't that-
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So,
So the principal held you guys back.
yep, because of the argument with my brother Tony's mother.
And she was trying to, let me get this straight in my head. They were going to draft you?
Oh, yeah, in February.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this was all in the 5th grade. And I was going to be drafted when
Why,
I
were
was,
you
so I was
18?
a year older.
You were 18 then?
18 then.
Ah, they were going to draft you right out of school.
So, yeah. Well, they weren't. They're going to take my physical. Then I have to wait.
Yeah.
I kind of screwed up that a little bit when I got into Commonwealth Avenue and I took my physical. I was there all day. There was about 300 of us. And I was tired. And I called my father up and I says, look, I'm getting dressed. I'm going outside. I'm going to get in that line. And I'll be home. So I went outside and I looked at the long line. I didn't want that one. That was a real long line. I got in the short line, which moved very fast. And I get up to the desk. The guy stamps my paper. He says, the bus will be here in a half an hour for you. So I had to call my father up, tell him where I left the key, and him and my uncle come down and took the car home, and I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky that night.
That night?
And I never come home for 3 years.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. So you got drafted, and did you graduate from high school?
Oh, yeah, I had
before?
already graduated in February, the whole class.
Okay.
Because they were going home, and I had to go for
Well,
physical.
now, what was the long line? If
The
the
long
short
line
was just getting you in.
Yeah, the short line. I mean the long line is when you had to wait for them to go through your papers and stamp them and go home. But I didn't go. I went in the short line. I didn't know that's what it was.
You didn't know that was the one that was going to sign you in?
Yeah, immediate induction.
I see. That was a mistake.
It was, but it was a good one because I was working on a farm, and even when you were in the grade schools, we had a bus that used to bring us home and pick us up. And they told us that when we get home, we had a half an hour to change our clothes, get a sandwich, and be out to go to work.
Uh-huh.
That went on for a long time.
Uh-huh. Now, how did you feel about going into the service?
Oh, I didn't mind it at all. I was getting away from the farm.
Yeah, I see. Okay. Enough of the farm, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Yeah.
And I was
Had you ever been outside Massachusetts before?
No.
Yeah.
But I was ready.
And you went by train down to Fort Knox?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bus until we got to the train station, then by train down to Fort Knox. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, what was Fort Knox? What was that?
That was an armored division.
I see. And they didn't ask you. They just put you in the armored division.
Yeah. They wanted any man they could get.
Yeah.
Because it was, 42.
Yeah.
Everything was starting to get up.
Yeah.
So we had, I was there for a while and took my armored training. And we got a slack period in 43 or something. And they said, well, you can't go home. So what do you want to do? And I said, well, I always wanted to fly a plane, just like that. He says, okay. And they sent me up to North Carolina to be a pilot for a P-38.
Oh, fighter pilot.
Yeah. So I was there a month. And the next day I was supposed to take my pilot train to fly a plane. It was a Piper Cub. Start with that. And about 11 o'clock, they come in. One great big guy, oh, God, he must have been 6'6", and he weighed about 300 pounds. He got us all out of bed. He says, you, and you, get dressed. you're going with me right now. We're going down to Virginia. You're going overseas as tank men again.
So they yanked you out
of the Air Force. Yep. They put me in there and they took me out.
Yeah, well, that's the Army.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you were back in tanks again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
When did you go overseas?
43.
You remember when in 43?
Well, there was no snow on the ground.
Yeah.
So it was in the fall.
Yeah. In the fall of 43.
Yeah.
And how did they get the tank? The tanks go over in the same ship?
Oh, no, there were tanks over there.
Oh, I see.
But I tell you what, when I landed there, I was
Where'd you land?
Sorrento, and then we went up by train to Naples.
Yeah.
Then to Caserta.
Yeah.
So
I know Caserta.
I was in the Caserta for a while, and
now where were the Germans at that point?
Right there.
In Caserta.
Down further. Yeah. They were in Monte Cassino.
Yes, okay.
They
that was
had
a terrible battle.
Oh God, they were like rats.
Yeah.
You know, the Polish people were there, and he had like 100 men that were trying to climb that mountain to get up there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, up come the trap doors. When they were halfway up, the machine guns come down and killed them all.
Yeah.
And they got angry, and the Germans always said that they were holding 90 people hostage from the town so they wouldn't bomb them. And the Polish said, we don't care. We lost almost 1,500 men here, and we're going to bomb you. So they did. And when the bombing was over, there was no hostages.
Mm-hmm. There weren't any.
They
didn't have any.
Didn't have any.
Yeah.
But it was a beautiful monastery.
Yeah,
God, it was big.
Yeah. Yeah. So
they flattened it.
You were stationed in Caserta with your tank, right?
Yes. I was assigned the 4th Armored Division. How did they put it? Unenrolled or something like that. I could run the tank. I could be with the men, but I couldn't be into too much action. I was always in the rear because I had to have one more tank destroyed before I was assigned.
I see. So you were held back.
Yeah.
And you were in Caserta.
Yeah. But I was still with the men.
Which kind of a tank?
Sherman tank.
Okay. And how many men did that carry?
4. 2. One driver, one assistant driver, who also ran the machine gun. And I ran the cannon. I had a radio man that helped me inside. And we got along good. We used to be out, but we were on the tail end all the time.
Yeah, I see. And what was your rank?
I was temporary sergeant.
Temporary sergeant, buck sergeant, 3 stripes.
Yep.
And you were in command
there's a picture of me with the stripes on.
Uh-huh. And so you were in charge of the tank and you were a buck sergeant.
Yes.
And what about the other guys? What rank did
they have? They were corporals, but I was the highest one.
Yeah.
And I had to work up. If we had the tank, I would already become a staff sergeant.
I see.
So that some could become a buck sergeant. Yeah. I think the radio man was a corporal.
Yeah.
And the other 2, I don't think they had. They're like PFCs.
Yeah.
They were new men, but they were short.
Yeah.
Because, see, the 2 men one that drove the tank and the other, they were no more than 5 feet tall.
Really?
Well, because it's low.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're in Caserta, and the battles are going on at Monte Cassino, and this is in the spring of 43.
Mm-hmm.
So then what happened?
Well, we were kind of when the Polish people bombed it, that kind of ended the Germans right there. But before that, they used to take us on, when they weren't out with the tanks and that, I was taken on what were they called? They used to drop from airplanes onto the mountain soldiers.
Oh, yeah,
And
the
we went
10th Mountain Division.
Yeah, we went up as pallbearers. No, not pallbearers, litter bearers, to get the wounded out. And when we got there, I had another guy that was with me. He was scared stiff because there were snipers. So you could hear the bullets going by. And we were carrying out one guy that was injured pretty badly. And all of a sudden, a bullet zipped by his head. He got scared. He dropped the litter and took off.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm on the ground, and I could hear the bullets go, but they couldn't see me because it was in the brush. So I grabbed this soldier, and I said, look, let's crawl in the woods a little bit, and you get your arms around my neck, and I'll crawl up to the top. And I did. I brought him up.
With this wounded guy.
With the wounded guy, he hung on to me, and I dragged him up from, because I crawled on the ground. Otherwise, if I stood up, I would have got hit.
Yeah. Yeah. And whereabouts was that?
That was a little bit north of Monte Cassino, yeah.
Yeah.
Because everything is mountains in there.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I remember. Then there was a pretty clear run, as I remember it, up to Rome. When did the Germans...
Well, see, Rome was the other way, up along the west coast.
Right.
And the only time I got up there was after the war.
Yeah.
I went to Rome.
Yeah.
For about 2 days.
Just
a
after
weekend.
the war was all over.
Yeah.
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 And so then what happened?
After it was over?
No.
Oh.
So you were in the reserve with the tank, but you had this rescue duty to do from time to time.
I crawled up and then until they could reach me, and then they grabbed him, brought him in. And the other guy, I never saw him again because he was in my tent.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, and he never come back. I don't know what they did with him, whether they arrested him or what.
Because he dropped off.
Yeah, because he dropped the thing, the litter, but I don't know how he got back. I think they arrested him. Because
I guess
they
probably did.
Yeah, but I never knew.
Huh. Did you know him well?
No, I met him when we got in that tent.
I see. Okay. So then what happens?
Well, after that, we got Monte Cassino was done.
Yeah.
And while we were waiting for them to come out and drop the guns, there was a lieutenant that came up, walked up to me, and were near the fence. And all these guys that were near me all had rifles, and I didn't. I had a .45.
No carbine.
No carbine, because you couldn't.
Yeah.
You're in a tank. You can't put it up.
Right.
So he turned around and what'd they do to me? They had... What was I on?
You were talking about the lieutenant coming up.
Oh, yeah. He come up to me, and all of a sudden he takes his gun out. Well, geez, all our guys, they turned around and started to point the rifle at him. And he shook his head no. He flipped the gun over, handed it to me, and says, you don't have a rifle. You take my gun, and please take care of it in broken English. and I have it today.
Really?
I have it today.
And what was this?
It was a 38 Mauser.
And this is a Italian?
German.
German lieutenant.
Yeah.
He'd been captured.
Yeah. So they were all coming out, but they had to drop their armament. But he walked up to me.
And gave it to you.
Gave me the gun, said, take care of it. And I had it, when I got home, I had it registered. And it's fired every time I have to get my license renewed.
That's a bizarre story, Joe.
I still have it today. I had it out the other day just to make sure I know how to work it.
That's amazing. So then you're tracking the Germans because they're going.
So we went up, and I was in the rear. And when we got up to this plaza, I don't know what it was. This is where Mussolini was.
Oh, Milan.
Milan, okay. So there was about 100 Italian soldiers there. No armament, nothing. They come up to my commander and they said, we're going to show you how faithful we're going to be to you people. So he says, okay. He says, so we're going to go in and we'll get him. So they went in, 10 of them went in the building where Mussolini was. We heard shots. They didn't say anything about shooting. And next thing you know, they dragged Mussolini and his mistress out by the legs, hung him upside down in the plaza until they were cut down.
And you were there.
I was there.
Yeah.
And what I didn't know was that I had an uncle there, and he was looking for me.
Really?
But he didn't know he was looking with the soldiers.
Yeah.
And I was in the armament.
Yeah.
So I didn't know he was there because my father kept writing them, telling him he's in Sicily, in Italy, and what was going on. And so he was up there looking for me. And when we got back down to where we were after Mussolini was taken down, and I had, what was it? They called me in and said everybody was going home. So I figured, oh boy, I'm going home. I'm almost 3 years in.
Finally.
So they said, you can't go home. I says, why not? He says, well, there's 3 weeks that you're short of 300, of 3 years. Short of being in 3 years. So you have to stay here for 3 weeks, and we're going to put you in the 300 General Hospital. They need help. So they put me in a 300 General Hospital as an X-ray technician. And I didn't know anything about an X-ray technician, but they taught me a little bit. But in the meantime, I asked him for some time off. He said, how much have you had? I says, I haven't had anything since I've been in.
Right.
So he says, I'll give you 10 days. Where are you going? I says, I'll go down to Sicily and see some of my father's people. Okay. He says, but you can't go alone. So there was another guy that wanted to go to Sicily. He had an aunt that was a nun. It was right near Messina, not Messina. What was it? Right across? Was that Messina? Yeah. Okay, that was Messina. And so he came with me. And we could see when we were walking down the street to go to see his aunt first after we got off the train. And we could see the people up in the window with the guns. They were Italian, but they didn't know whether we were the enemy or the good people.
Ah, okay.
So we finally, I guess somebody told them that we're visitors, we're American soldiers. So we went and saw his aunt, and he came with me to see my relatives, and we had a good time for a few days there. And I saw my uncle that was up there at where Mussolini was.
Yeah?
I saw him, and he was tickled pink to meet me. And he had a son that was also named Joe. and he was in the train department. He was fixing trains and sending them all over.
Yeah. Now, was the war over by this time?
Yes, it was over in Italy, yeah. Once Mussolini was done, the war ended.
Yeah, but that would have been...
That's just Italy.
Yeah.
Because the war, and I thought we were going down. When I finally get on the boat, we had one of these smaller boats, and it had people all downstairs. They had soldiers up on the deck.
Yeah.
And I said to the guys beside me, there was 3 of them. So I says, we better get off the deck. I says, if this ship goes down and up, I says, we're going to be like boards.
Yeah.
So with the salt. So we climbed up the life rafts. They were about 10 high.
Yeah. And Liberty ship, this was.
Liberty ship, that's what it was. So we got in there, and we had to stay there, 4 of us. Because if 2 left to go down to the bathroom or go to eat, the other 2 waited until they come back, and then they went down and they stayed there. Otherwise, somebody on deck would have climbed and got a hold of our home.
Oh?
So we were 14 days on that ship.
Yeah. Where did you take off from? Naples?
Naples.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we ended...
Did you get off on that upside-down ship that had been sunk?
This one, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't think we got on that one. We got on another one that was a Red Cross ship. Mm-hmm. And that was easy to get on and get onto the...
But the war in Europe was still going on.
Yes, the one in the Pacific with the Japanese.
Yeah, but not in Europe.
Not in Europe, no.
So this would have been maybe June.
Yeah, because there was still...
45.
Yeah, because it was still going on, I think, a little bit up in Belgium and that. What do they call that one there? The
Bulge?
Bulge, yeah.
So that was April.
On the downhill, yeah.
It was April of 45. So you went home when the war in Europe was still going.
Yeah.
Because you'd been in for 3 years.
3 years. Anyone 3 years can be discharged. So I ended up in Virginia, and they put me on a train.
Hampton Roads?
I don't know what,
Probably.
I think so.
Yeah.
And they put me up to Fort Devens.
Right.
So
I can still smell that coal smoke at Fort Devens.
Oh, yeah.
You remember?
Yes. I was there for about a week. And then my commander come up to me and he said, I want you to go home for the weekend and come back with your car like nothing happened. He says, I'm going to declare you absent without leave, AOL. And he says, then I'll discharge you. So I come back, and they took my car, and they brought me up to his office, and he sat me down. He had papers and everything, and within 2 days, I was home.
And that was the first time you'd been home since you got an active duty.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I left the farm, there was no tractors or no nothing. It was all horses.
Yeah.
And when I got back, my father called me and he says, come into the barn. He says, I want to show you something.
They must have been awful glad to see you after 3 years.
Well, when I was at different places, when they didn't need us too much, they used to always send us out for more training.
Oh.
And my father came down one time to the Carolinas, him and his uncle and his brother, and they visited me there. And then when I was out in Denver, Colorado...
Oh, were you in Denver?
Yeah, just for training.
Where? Fort Logan?
No, right down the bottom of...
Lowry?
I forget what it... No, that didn't sound like it. What's the Denver is up in the mountain.
Denver's on the flatland, but then you can see the mountains from Denver and Pikes Peak.
They were high, though, weren't they?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So they were high, And down below, lower, I forget what the name of the town was. And
But it was near Denver.
yeah, they didn't want to climb. They had this training
Well,
place.
What the hell were you doing in Denver?
They didn't know what to do with us. So they sent us away.
Well, I was there for a month or two. It was a very different town from the way it is now.
Yeah.
All those low buildings. And
Yeah.
It was fascinating.
So I had my aunt come out with her two girlfriends. They were working in Washington, D.C., and then the three of them and me, and I got two other guys, and we had the weekend off, and we took them all around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was a great town.
yeah,
And the Brown Palace and the Shirley Savoy were those two places, but they were too fancy for us. We
Yeah.
just could go in and look around.
yeah. Because I got pictures where we visited. There was like the old time train
Yeah.
and all over it to get the pictures of the other three. I was taking them. They never took a picture of me up there.
Denver was a great town.
Yeah.
Though. Yeah.
So,
So did you, when you were traveling home on the Liberty ship,
yeah,
were you in convoy or were you just,
no, we came home alone because the ship was fast and didn't need any
no destroyers or
Right, nothing.
air cover or
No.
anything?
going over. We needed it,
Yeah.
but not coming
I
back
remember
because
that.
see,
I remember
the
that.
Germans were just about all done.
Yeah. They didn't have much
No.
U-boat action either.
Right. So, that's
So,
what happened.
so that must have been quite an experience when you walked in the door
Oh yeah,
back here after 3 years.
big changes. So he took me in this barn.
Yeah.
And he said, we went over something. He pulled this sheet off, and it was a tractor.
Yeah.
Never had tractor. When I left, we had horses.
Yeah.
The horses were gone, but we were machinery.
Yeah.
So we had the tractor, and he had the tractor hooked up so that it would bring the vegetables in to be cleaned and washed and packed and sent on the trucks to go
Boston.
to Boston.
Yeah.
And I used to drive them into, what was that down? We used to stop at Scully Square.
Yeah. And the Haymarket.
Haymarket.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a salesman there.
Yeah.
And I don't know, by the time I got there, about 11, 12 o'clock, he'd have most of the loads sold because they knew my father's was a good grower.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd go by these different wholesalers and drop off what they bought.
Yeah.
And then
I see.
finally, my father would say, okay, I'm going home because everything is sold. He says, you stay and you go down where the horse barns are, that they still had horses there, and bring back a load of manure.
Ah, okay.
That had to go this way.
Yeah. Yeah. So how many truck farms were there in Lexington?
Oh, there was a lot.
Yeah.
One is still going. It's now a big, what do you call them, where they sell whatever they raise. I did that too when I got out. You know, we needed
You're
extra
talking
money.
about Wilson?
Yeah, Wilson. Yeah.
They're the only ones
Yeah.
left.
We went by there,
The
and we were
Vincent
in
had
East
one.
Lexington, and
Yeah.
so from them they helped me get started on a roadside stand.
Oh, really?
And
now,
also-
Barney Tocho lived there,
Yeah,
and he had a truck farm.
yeah.
And,
And Mahoney's in Winchester,
yeah,
they used to come over. I knew them,
yeah.
and they all helped me get started. And I did that for a couple of years until I got married, and I found out that there's not enough money when you have to divide it up 6 ways. So I had a good amount of money coming from the government, and I bought a place in Concord, a flower shop.
Oh, that flower shop which I Wayside,
Yes.
which I patronize because Wayne runs it.
Yeah.
I get all my stuff from there.
Yeah. I started out with one.
So you started with Wayside.
I had to go to night school, learn how to do the flowers, and I liked it. And from there, I expanded to the Hanscom. I had a flower shop there, and then I wanted one in Lexington. That's where I came from. It was on Waltham Street.
Yeah.
And then the other one was, I bought, a cousin of mine had it, and he didn't like it, so he sold it to me. It was in Waltham. In the West
Still?
End. Yeah. So
Where
I had
is it,
4.
Waltham?
What do you call that? Let's see, east and west. West. There was a fork in the road.
Yeah.
And a supermarket.
Yeah.
Across the street.
Yeah.
There was 4 stores there.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So
And I had
there
that
are still, how many does Wayne have?
He sold them all.
Oh, really?
Yeah. While I had a physical to go to, and I went there, and the doctor says to me, "You've been working 7 days a week all your life in the service and whatever." He says, "Your lips are starting to change color." He says, "If you don't get out of there, you're going to die." So I said, "Okay." That's why I told Wayne to run it. I bought a motorhome, took off.
Did you? No kidding.
Went all over. The only place I wouldn't go was to Alaska, because the road was stoned, and no hot top.
I see. So when was this, Joe?
Well, it was in 48, 49, because
Really?
I got married in 50.
Uh-huh.
And then I moved to Concord in 50.
Okay. So you left Lexington in 1950.
Yeah.
And you're still living in Concord?
No, I'm in Middleborough.
I see. How'd you end up out there?
Well, I went to the Cape, down to Cape Cod. I lived in Yarmouthport.
Me too.
Yeah.
Where in Yarmouthport?
Right near where there's a store that you take a left, it's Willow Street or something. Just before that, there's a store there.
Yeah, on the corner of Kings Highway and
Whatever.
the road to
We were down in the hollow there.
Yeah.
There was a lot of homes in there, and I was
sea captain's home.
I was on Webfoot Way, as I was on.
It's a wonderful town.
Yeah.
Hallett's Drugstore.
Yeah. So at that time, 495 wasn't completed.
Right.
So no one used to come down to see us, because there was that bulge when they get off of 495 to the road. They just got discouraged.
Yeah.
I had a daughter of my wife's. She had 2 small children, so she was coming down for a visit to stay for a week. She was almost 12 hours on bumper to bumper. She was a basket
Never
case.
do that again.
So with that, I decided with my wife that we would go back up towards Lexington and Concord. So we went up to Plymouth, and we were looking around in Plymouth, and we found a place we liked. And a friend of mine who was a fireman, he said, "Don't buy in there if there's a propane tank between 2 houses." He says, "If that tank goes, it's going to ruin 2 homes." So I didn't buy it. I couldn't find any that didn't have them. So I come out to Middleborough, and that way we saw a place there. And Oak Point, it's called. And that's where I am today.
Yeah. You miss Lexington?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know it. I was in there today, and I'm telling you, the streets look different.
Yeah.
But there's a few that's still there since the day I was there.
Yeah. Well, I moved here in 49, and boy, has it changed since 1949.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised.
Yeah.
They all change.
Yeah. Now, looking back 75 years, you know, we're a couple of old guys, and not too many people around who can look back at 75 years. How does that war experience look to you? How did that?
Well, I didn't mind. It was better than being on a farm.
Yeah. You didn't like that.
No, I was in a tank, and I didn't mind it a bit.
Yeah.
So I never had to carry a rifle or anything.
Yeah. And you met some pretty interesting. Did you keep up with the guys you knew during the war?
They were all from New York.
Oh,
All my friends were from New York.
yeah.
So they kind of went each
Drifted away. Yeah.
And they started dying.
Well, I know. You know, as I say to people, there are a lot of perks of old age, but losing comrades is not one of them.
No, I know it.
It's tough.
Yep.
Tough. Well, gee, this has been wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you.
It's been a great
Been nice
chance
talking to you.
to chat.
Never